The more we move forward, the better this content creation and creator economy gets in a sense of businesses. And the businesses who are taking advantage now are who are going to stand out. The more competition you have, the harder it is to stand out. Joe Rogan has this style on YouTube that they chop up 3 to 4 minutes of their question and answer of the podcast. And if you have a niche and good topic to cover, it's obvious that it can go viral. Having that fear and knowing that I have nobody to take care of me and nobody to support me, it helped me to walk through that ugly part.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to In the Making, where we explore the game changing stories of visionaries, innovators, and creators. Today, I am thrilled to introduce Sam Hajighasem, an entrepreneur who transformed his passion for storytelling into a thriving podcasting empire. Starting at the age of 16 as a self taught electronic music composer, Sam navigated through multiple career pivots, from sound design to founding Venture Podcasting, a company that has generated millions in revenue for businesses through strategic podcasting. If you ever wondered how podcasting can be even more than just a hobby, but a critical business tool, today's episode is for you. Get ready to be inspired by Sam's bold journey of reinvention and how he's using the power of podcasts to transform business into a digital first world. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you, Nia. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I would like to start with a quote. Entrepreneurship is often seen as glamorous, but it's in the hard pivots where true innovation happens. You started as a self taught electronic music composer and moved through different phases of life of your career. What was the exact moment that made you realize podcasting was going to be your breakthrough?
That's a great question. So when I started doing music composition, my core interest was in creativity. But at some point, I learned everything about composing and sound design. And I figured out that I get bored easily. I do have ADHD. And once I mastered it, there was nothing else that interested me. And then I kind of turned to business and entrepreneurship because the creativity is never ending.
Yes.
And at the same time, you have experience in that. I know you've been in, a few entrepreneur journeys. So, and at the other thing that was life changing for me was the fact that I started to go into using my creativity in social media. But I realized that most people are focusing only on, Instagram and other platforms. And what they're missing is podcasting, using it for business. So that was the time that I thought, okay, this is a great breakthrough. It's different, it's controversial. People don't believe in it yet. So if I can go out there and have a chance to change their mindset, then I get a chance to grow my business, which it was tough to do it, but it actually came through.
So, your background in sound design and audio engineering, do you think that played a huge role in success with podcasting?
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to start any business, if you know the basic skill yourself, you can always run a business because at first you don't have money or budget to hire people, or even if you hire people, they can ghost you or they might not turn out to be good and you have projects to deliver. So once you have that skill, you can actually deliver it yourself. You're not afraid of going through this entrepreneurial journey. Coming from that background allowed me to do everything myself to get to the point that I can outsource it and start hiring was a huge, role play for me.
Wow, it's fascinating how the things we learn sometimes leads us to a path we've never imagined, right? It's a
For
blend
sure.
of creativity and business that takes us to places we don't ever expect. You
Yeah.
mentioned that drop shipping did not work out for you, but the content creation was beneficial for you. What advice do you have for people who are in the failing stage but haven't yet found their niche?
So one of the reasons I failed is not because dropshipping is not a good niche. It's because I really couldn't figure it out because of my time limit. So I'm an immigrant. I'm the first generation here, and I don't have my parents here. I didn't have the luxury of being able to sleep in their home. I had to financially be independent and also be able to build this. I didn't have enough resources to go through the dropshipping process of learning. And then I realized that I'm failing at it. I turned back to my own skill of sound design, sound engineering, audio, and video that I've done before, which was a better way for me to grow. And my suggestions to people is just do it, figure it out. Just listen to your gut. At some point, you will end up with what you want. So I had to just figure out what fits me in my life and in my situation. So I would suggest just do it. Don't overthink it. Do the punches, see what sticks, and then go from there.
I'm so glad Sammy's mentioned that. For so many years, I kept on doing things that either people asked me to do, and I did well, but I always quit those paths because I could not relate to them. And
Mhm.
I always had to listen to myself. And I said, I'm going to do these entrepreneur journeys. But when I started podcasting, it was already such a crowded field. And people still came up to me and said, you're entering a very crowded field. They almost said to me, how are you even planning to make money out of it? I said, I don't know.
Yeah,
Unless
there
I
you go.
try something, put my hands and arms around it, you're never going to know how you're going to make it. And I think that's the power of persistence. Sometimes failure is the getaway to find our real strength.
For sure, 100%. And
We are both first generation immigrants.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, exactly. Like I can see that you have that entrepreneur side of you, and to be honest, not to downgrade anybody's job or do, throw some rock at them. The only thing that I have is I get bored, entrepreneurs get bored. So life is full of experiences. So yeah, it might be crowded, but it doesn't mean that you can try or see. And the whole core of entrepreneurship is not knowing. And if you knew it, it wouldn't be entrepreneurship. Not knowing is kind of a fun part, but it also has its own ugly part of the process.
So true.
Yeah,
Podcasting isn't just a content medium anymore. It's a tool for connection, business growth,
there
and
you go.
lead generation, right? You've
Yeah.
spoken about how podcasting is not just about creating content, but generating leads and relationships. Can you walk us through how businesses can use podcasts as a lead generation tool?
For sure. Yeah, I do a lot of these talks, sales calls every day, and I'm excited to talk about this because it really matters, like how businesses approach it. I hear from businesses, podcasting category is saturated, which might be true to some sense. I'm not ignoring that, but the fact is, especially after COVID, everything moved online. People have to start to look at podcasting as kind of trade shows or event shows in the past. So you would go there and start making connections, and one advantage that podcasting has that the events didn't have is when you have a podcast, you essentially provide a spotlight for your target audience, especially when you have a business. So most businesses, when they want to approach podcasting, they want to talk about themselves and what they do and who they are. Of course, that's not gonna get them leads because nobody cares at that point unless you are maybe a company like Verizon or a big company that can afford that. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to do it because nobody recognizes them. But if they change their perspective and instead of just talking about themselves, they create a podcast show and the topic around their target audience interests. To give you an example, I have a podcasting agency and also a social media agency. Both of these, I work with marketing teams and also founders. I do have a show, but I didn't have the time to create tons of podcasts. But one of the things that I do about my show is I go after founders and marketers and I send out emails to them, and the show is about their success. So I'm not trying to bait them into coming to become my clients. I'm trying to create a relationship. And then through that relationship, if they are open, we can create that partnership. So once I reach out to them, first of all, the reaching out process is so much easier. Like everybody's doing cold emails, cold outreaches, but the conversion rate for all of us has been dropping. Everybody's tired of getting advertising and cold emails. But when you have a podcast, when you send them an email with the subject line could be so intriguing. Like when you send an email and say, would you be a guest on my show? Everybody open that subject line in the email because there is a benefit for them in it. So it's a free PR for that person. Right now, you invite me on this show and you reached out to me. Of course, I want to be on your show because I know you're going to edit this podcast. You're going to put it out there. I'm seeing your show is growing, and then it's going to benefit me. I'm going to put half an hour to 45 minutes. I'm going to have this spotlight. Not only we learn from one another, but we create a bond, we create a relationship. And at some point, you can turn this to become lead. So that's the core business idea behind it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad you mentioned it so beautifully. And what's remarkable about your approach is that how you use storytelling as both a relationship building tool and a revenue generator. So I
Yeah.
love that aspect. During the pandemic, Sam, many companies were forced to rethink how they connect with clients. You shifted your strategy in COVID and connected with clients personally. So, how can businesses continue to adapt in the post pandemic world like you did?
To be honest, it's becoming challenging for every business to adapt to this situation because a one-person solopreneur can start doing the same thing that a big company does. So the competition is high. But I would suggest like doing the same thing but improving with the rise of AI right now. So I'm actually obsessed with tech and all that. One of my goals is go to SaaS and start a SaaS company. And one thing that I'm learning is when you want to reach out to people online and convert them, using AI in order to make it more personalized is becoming so handy. And if you want to reach out to 1,000 of people, you can use AI to get a summary of their life, get summary of what they do, and start making these reach personalized. At the same time, the power of podcasting, the power of social media, repurposing your content, being omnipresent. Most businesses think about ROI and they're not going to see it in a month, but they're going to see it after 6 months or a year. And they don't have the patience for that. But if they have the patience, everything's moving toward this direction. And the businesses who don't apply it, they're just going to stay behind.
Yeah, that's incredible. The pandemic has shown us that digital connection isn't just an option, it is the future. And those
Sure.
who
Yeah.
embraced it, they are thriving.
Yeah.
Your company has helped businesses generate over 10 million in revenue. What's the biggest challenge companies face when trying to adapt or adopt a podcast as a business tool? And how have you helped them overcome this?
That's a great question. So one of the biggest challenges is when I want to sell the idea for them is most companies, they're afraid of hurting their brand because I give them the idea of standing out. So if you want to stand out in the podcast environment, your show has to have a few features. It has to be concise. It has to be so valuable because you have to respect the person who's listening to your podcast. It has to be to the point. And in order to do that, you need great hooks, great intros. You need something engaging. And sometimes to do that, you have to go outside the box of the brand. And people are afraid of hurting their brand, which is true. But they don't realize that thinking outside the box doesn't mean you can align your brand with innovative thinking. So what I do is I strategize with my team, everything for them in a way that aligns with their brand so they feel comfortable walking outside of that comfort zone they have about their brand. And the other important thing I see they're struggling is going out of the framework of the questions, which I always suggest them. My clients, I always tell them to look at it as a framework and we teach them how to go deeper because most people they don't feel comfortable asking questions and dive deeper, but this is actually where the juice of the conversation is, and this is where people are craving to get the information from.
Yeah.
These are a bit challenging, but we have training and walking through that for a month or so, people will start to get comfortable and start doing it and ask questions in a better way.
Yeah, in a world flooded with content, it's not enough to create, it's about creating impact. It's
Exactly.
to create content, especially with AI now, it's so easy. But I feel you cannot be becoming dumber. We all need to become wiser with AI. And I use AI to write emails, don't get me wrong, but I would edit them. I see flood of emails where people even forget to remove asterisks.
Yeah.
Like, did you even write my name? No, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You said it well. In the world that everybody's putting content out there, if you don't go with the concept of adding value, adding impact, being different, it becomes challenging to stand out. If you take advantage of it in a correct way, summarize it, learn how to work with it, then it can actually impact and connect with people.
Yeah, and save so much time, which is phenomenal that we have that medium with us now. So using it towards our advantage is the best thing that we all can do. You mentioned that storytelling has been a key in your success. Do you think
Sure.
the rise of digital and social media has helped or diluted the art of storytelling?
Oh, for sure, it helped. There are so many creators out there. Everyone can tell their stories now, and stories actually becoming more important every day. Because if you go back in history, everything is about selling and story. If you go to an interview, it's your story and the skill of selling that you win. If you want to get a job, the more we move forward, the better the stories get, and the more people get impact from personal stories. So it's not just Hollywood that can tell stories. Every person can tell a story of their own perspective. We are living in a good era in regard to storytelling.
I agree. And I want to tell the viewers that if you're going through something right now at this moment, it's because you're creating that story for your future. So don't ask that question, why me? Ask the question, why not me? It doesn't mean that you have to stay in the same situation. You can change your situation, but the reason you are here is you're made for something more bigger and better. And
Yeah.
we live in an age where anyone can tell a story, but not every story gets heard. It's the way we craft these stories that matters.
For sure.
You've created a whole ecosystem with podcasting that has helped businesses thrive. How do you see the future of content creation evolving over the next 5 years?
It's obviously evolving, and every business is going to need it at some point. The more we move forward, the better this content creation and creator economy gets in a sense of businesses. And the businesses who are taking advantage now are who are going to stand out. The more competition you have, the harder it is to stand out. Right now, there are so many companies who are reserved and don't see the ROI in it, so they don't invest. The other companies that see that opportunity take advantage of it. Moving forward, every business is going to need it. If I want to go to a restaurant, I first check out their social media accounts. It's more pleasing to see the picture of it rather than reading about it because it's fast, it's quick, or you can read reviews online. You have to be omnipresent in order to have this credibility and also put yourself as a thought leader in the industry.
That's so true. I'll give you an example. Somebody had contacted me regarding my podcast recently to
Mhm.
help me navigate through the ifs and the buts and the hows. And I was very intrigued by the email. I scheduled the calendar appointment. And then that morning, I opened their website because I wanted to learn a little more about them. And I realized that the whole website looked like a copy and paste from somewhere. Their reviews
Oh,
were literally from like Instagram videos, and just when the name was going to be announced, like this company helped me, it was cut out. So they had these big names, big brand
yeah,
people, but with no names. And I'm like, who are you? And then
yeah.
they had Lorem Ipsum from
Oh my God.
so many places. So I sent him a feedback. I said, dude, you are not legitimate. And even if you
Yeah.
are, not one time I would work with you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it's backbone of your background. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, as you said, it doesn't have to be fancy or all that. I know people who make website with Google website. Like Google provides this, and it's so easy to create. You can create it in one day, but it can be clean. It can have a good copywriting. It can be you can represent yourself in a good way. So having those online presence is just everything, especially since every business is becoming kind of international. So we have clients from Dubai right now. We have clients from all over the world. We couldn't do this maybe 30 years ago or 20 years ago. So it's a great time for all of us to be omnipresent and being online.
For someone who's starting in podcasting, what's one thing, Sam, they should focus on to build a engaged and loyal audience?
Niching down and finding your target audience is the first advice I give to people because the wider your niche, the bigger your competitors. Alex Hormozy said, if you are within the first people who post 21 or 20 episodes entirely for the podcast, you're within the top 10% of podcasters. So that's crazy. I'm guilty of that too. I've been busy. I couldn't stick with my own podcast, right? And I understand it. You have to be very consistent. And in order to be consistent, you have to have a few episodes in your back pocket because things come up, you get sick, you go on vacation. And the other thing I say, take advantage of repurposing your content. Repurpose the hell out of your podcast. Like Joe Rogan has this style on YouTube that they chop up 3 to 4 minutes of their question and answer of the podcast. So you can apply this to YouTube. You can apply the same thing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So taking all of those and making different pieces of content means you get more views. It means we get more exposure. So imagine every podcast can become like 20 pieces of content. It's time saving. It also gives you more exposure. And if you have a niche and good topic to cover, it's obvious that it can go viral. It's obvious that it can get views. It's obvious that your podcast is going to be heard because it's so specific and expert, and you are so much producing so much content that at some point people are going to hear you.
I love that. That is so important and relevant. A lot of times, people, when they get started, it's not necessary that you will have that visibility, but you got to get started to learn where you're going in life.
100%.
And the entrepreneurial path is often glamorized, Sam, right? What's one truth about entrepreneurship that people rarely talk about, but they should?
That's a great question. It's about the ugly part of the entrepreneurship. As you said, it's so glamorous. And to be honest, you have to be passionate, or you have to be in love with the process, or you have to be afraid of something bigger. For me, I was afraid of staying the same, and especially being an immigrant, this is my personal opinion, to go and have a 9 to 5 job and then save some money, and then at the end get a home, and that's it. So having that fear and knowing that I have nobody to take care of me and nobody to support me, it helped me to walk through that ugly part, because it takes you places that you can't even imagine. It pushes you to the edges, especially if you are not fortunate to have some opportunities and having these tough nights. But being persistent with the process, I was able to come out of it. I'm still growing, I'm still building. But if you're okay to see that ugly part of the entrepreneurship and deal with it, it can become glamorous. I personally went through depression, anxiety through this process, and I saw no point in it to continue anymore. But the
Right.
only thing was the fear of staying in the same situation, that I had to work, that I had to put through everything I had. And having some sort of meaning to see what I actually want to achieve, or having that fear, helps you to go through that process and pass this ugly part and maybe get to that glamorous stage.
Wow, that's so well said, Sam. And I would also like to add to that entrepreneur journey looks amazing and fabulous. And you will get burnout, you will have your lows and highs. For me, something that has really helped me is to find that purpose. And like Sam said, he had a purpose and it applied to me. I just felt that I was supposed to do and create something in the creative field. And I found my path later. It can be very lonely and nobody talks about that. There will be glamour ahead of you if you work on the path of consistency and persistency and
Yeah,
build a community like what Sam has done with the real connections and authenticity. You can master it
yeah.
all.
You said it well. It's a lonely place. You might lose friends, but being passionate about that process and not being afraid, having that purpose behind you. And we all have a point to prove to our parents. And that thing was so big for me. I love my dad. He's amazing. But I always wanted to prove to him when I was a kid. I was always incapable of doing things. And that drive to just prove something to him, it wasn't mentally good for me, but at the same time, it was kind of a fire for me to push through things. So you got to dive deep what's in your instinct and follow that. That's why we said in the beginning, follow your gut.
Sam, you've inspired so many maybe moms and dads, whose kids have ADHD, they have AD, and they can be the other Sam, and so many great examples around the world.
For
Uh,
sure, yeah.
While we're wrapping this podcast, you've given such great insights and perspective towards entrepreneurship, leadership, and how to grow a business in even COVID-19. So, with that, I have a very special and a fun segment, which is called a rapid fire. Are you ready for that?
Let's go.
What's one thing about you that most people would not expect?
I'm in love with space and astronomy. Nobody knows that.
That's great. If you could only listen to one podcast for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Alex Hormozzi's podcast. I love this guy. It's so informative.
That's wonderful. What's your favorite way to repurpose podcast content for social media?
I would find the best hooks and interesting part of the podcast and start creating a story out of that. So your hook
Mhm.
might be in the middle of the podcast, and then you can stick it around and build a great story out of it. So storytelling is the way.
I love that. What's one business mistake that turned out to be a blessing in disguise for you?
The dropshipping business that I failed at.
Are there any business decisions that you regret? I love that. Last question. If you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Just do it. Don't overthink it. You're gonna learn from your mistake. Don't be perfect. Get feedback and improve.
Love that, Sam. Thank you so much. Steve Jobs once said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do it. And Sam, you just didn't start a podcasting company. You built a platform that help businesses grow in a ways that we can't even imagine. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey with us. Your story is a powerful reminder that success doesn't come from the easy paths, but from the bold decisions that we all make along the way. For everyone tuning in, if you're looking to transform your business, your brand, even your mindset, remember that every bold move starts with just one single step. Keep pushing, keep creating, and stay inspired. Until next time, don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe. And remember, every moment is in the making. Thank you.